Hey, you guys. I'm not on here to talk about Revelation right now. Maybe for a second. But yeah, I wanted to thank the very sweet, nice, kind comment of Christian and also somebody else. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but it was the day I was in the car and I said something like, I'm a mess. I have, because I've been reading Revelation. And they had a kind thing to say. I think it starts with an M. I hadn't seen their comments before, but they said I looked nice or something. But thank you. Thank you guys. But I wanted to touch on something I've been thinking about for a while. So I just asked Google just in case they might, give a legit answer on some things you ask it, like about Catholicism. They aren't gonna really, you know. Okay, so, but what's been on my mind for a while is this Jew thing with the tribulation stuff. Of course, I've been telling you about it, but before that, we all know about replacement theology, and I have told you, I made a comment in a video about it, how I think or I thought it comes from the Catholics. And I've said before how that's where the Protestants get our book, is from them, because it was Luther who was a Catholic, and Martin Luther, and he figured it out. He's like, this is hogwash. It's heresy. And he broke away. That's how Protestants were born. It's called, I think they get the term Protestant means like proliferation, or I don't know. The root word of Protestant basically means division, and we divided away from the Catholics. Okay. Of course, the Catholics changed a lot of their ways, and because they probably got a bunch of heat from that. But about like this, so the Catholics, I don't care what Google will tell you, the first pope was not Peter, and no. So I've shared those videos from the Parable channel, and I think they tell you when the first pope was, but it was basically an institution created to, just like when they were crucifying Jesus, the Jews had to go speak to the Romans. I don't know. Bible scholars know more about this. I've kind of heard about it, but I don't understand it. But the Romans were over the Jews, so they were running the Jews, but yet they had to appease the Jews' way of life, right? So, yeah. So Pontius Pilate was kind of doing a pope thing, but not really a pope thing. And those scribes and Pharisees and stuff, some of them were probably in bed with the Romans, or how like they all hated tax collectors because they were kind of doing business with the Romans and they were like traitors, right? So there was some meshing going on then, because evil has been around since the beginning, right? The seed of Satan. So when anybody can Google this and get even better documentation, but I'm just kind of throwing this out here so that if anybody were interested, you can, Catholics and Protestants alike, Jews, you can find the real history yourself. I'm just touching the surface, but all I know is the Second Temple got destroyed by the Romans. And of course, they're going to pull out all the good stuff first. And I don't know the era of Constantine, but I think he was a Roman. Like the Parable Channel will explain all that. And, there's a video about him specifically as well, how some speculate that he might not really have been a Christian. He just did that to get the Christians to fight with him. Some think he was, but because he was so heavily indoctrinated with the gods, that he just kind of incorporated Jesus in with all the rest of his gods. And in the video, it shows you like things that look just like Jesus, which is where do you think the Catholics get it? From the Romans, with all these little Jesus with the halo, because that was a pagan god that they made look like Jesus. And then even Jesus, they would make look like some kind of Roman soldier pagan thing. So they mangled it all together, okay? You can, like I said, watch the Parable Channel on my channel. There's this grouping called Blessings, and I've tried to put, because out of all the videos on the Parable Channel, how would you know which ones to look for, really? I mean, you can kind of go by the titles, but I think, and so I try to pull out my favorites and put them there. Oh, I relabeled it the Parable Channel. So you go down there. Well, I'm sure I have one in there about Constantine, and I'm sure that channel has even more about Constantine. But I think I have, and some of those videos repeat themselves, like they'll interchunk, they'll lump some from an older and mesh them in, and which is fine because nothing wrong with repeating things. So I might have a couple in there on Constantine. And I don't even know what era he was, but all I know is these Pope figures were created solely to keep the Jew system and the pagan system to get along, like the Pope would be the intermediator, and the Pope was not even a Jew, like for the Jews. Jews have rabbis, they don't have popes, but like the Christian Jews, the original Christians are Jews, and somehow somebody got crooked, and so where I'm going is this replacement theology. It's evil, of course, and it's all comes back from being jealous, wanting power, and it's all about power and jealousy. So they want to make the Jew religion their own. They will take the Jewish, so they sacked the Second Temple, okay? And they, I'm sure, stole all of their their writings, and then it conglomerated into the Catholic Church somewhere down the road, and then they had the Jewish books, and they're learning from them, but they're also improvising things they don't like, that they want power, so they change stuff up. So when Luther decided all this is bullshit and the Catholic Church is crazy, and they're a system, money and religious system, that's why throughout centuries, Babylon in Revelation is basically, everybody thinks it's the Catholic Church. That has been that way for years. They're in scarlet and purple and just like the Catholic Church. And like I said, I'm not against Catholic people, Catholic believers, and probably the popes now are maybe not so bad, but some of them still are. But not all Catholics are like up there in the Pope's business, up his skirt or anything. They're just being a Catholic. Okay, I'm not talking about them. So I'm just talking about the roots of it. Just like the roots of a Baptist, like I'm a Baptist. I know why I'm a Baptist is because they made fun of us, because we were always harping on be saved and be baptized. Whatever verse in Acts or something, it tells you. It tells you to get baptized after you get saved. So we kept peddling that and peddling it, pushing it. So they just gave us a nickname out of disparaging us, and they called us the Baptists. Anyway, so I think this is a residue from replacement theology, that came from a religion that was wanting power. Catholicism. Catholics cropped up because they wanted power over Jews, over Christians. They thought that the Christians were the new Jew, and if a Jew didn't convert, they got killed. If a Christian didn't convert, an original Jewish Christian, and then it spread to Greeks and Romans and all over, if they didn't convert to Catholicism, they got killed, because that was going to be the new religion, okay? So it was all corrupted because they just wanted power, basically, is all it was, to be an intermediary between Christians and pagans. And there were, like the Jews, could have their own thing while the Romans were running them, right? Well, replacement theology is from Catholicism. I think I heard it for sure, definitively, because the video I had made mentioned it briefly. I wasn't positive, but I think I heard it later on. It surely did come from the Catholics. And so that was just because they wanted to do, it's a power grab. Okay, now, when they straightened up because they got found out by Martin Luther King, the old one, like Martin Luther, not the black guy, okay? So when they got found out about Luther, through Luther, and then the Catholic Church got fractured, okay? They were calling themselves the first Christians, and they were not, okay? And it was just a power grab. They were all they had already stolen the Jewish books. They were reading them. They were improvising them, whatnot. By the time Luther broke away, this is all me speculating, okay? So then I Googled it. By the time Luther broke away, the Catholic Christians were already indoctrinated for years and years, centuries. So when Luther said, these parts are wrong with the Catholics, and this is how it really is, well, that was all true. But some residue remained as the Protestants grew, okay? The Protestants not only grew, that broke off from the Catholics, but there were still that small remnant core of the original Christians from the Jews. The Jews that believed in Christ, that we read about in the parables, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all the apostles, all the disciples, the 12, those were Jews. If not all of them got killed off by the Romans, there were still some of those left, okay? So see, you had Catholicism, and then you had the original ones. Jews, 12 disciples, but they got more disciples, and Paul got disciples. So those were the original, okay? And there were remnants left. Not all of them got killed off. That's what I call the Christians, when they were killing Christians and Jews, okay? So those are non-Catholic Christians and Jew Christians, and that was the first church, Acts. Catholicism sprung up, and they wanted to take over everything. Jews, Christian Jews, okay? Jews, non-Christians, Jews that were non-Christians, okay? Well, when Luther finally broke away, he figured it out that the Catholics are wrong. He broke away. It was Protestants. So those Protestants now, they agree with these Christians. Now, maybe they're like the Lollards and the, you'll learn about it in the Parable channel. I forget the other names of them, but they're very ancient old Christian, probably like the Armenians, but those are kind of like Coptic Christians. I don't know what that stuff means, but they are pretty old over there in Armenia. But anyway, you have your original Jewish Christians, then they made disciples, then Catholicism cropped up, tried to kill off all the Jews and all those Christian Jews. Then when Luther, centuries later, decided, so you have then these Protestants that were mostly indoctrinated with these rituals of Catholicism and replacement theology, they start mixing in with the original Christians that didn't succumb to Catholicism, okay? And so they had to outgrow and unlearn some of this Catholic bullshit. They had to unlearn it. They broke away from it. Plus, they were making more disciples as time went on. So then you have two. You have Catholics that stayed Catholics, and then you have the Christians. They wanted to be original, like the Jews taught us, like the original Jew Christians taught us, okay? So, but I think there was some residue shit from this Catholic, old world Catholic that stayed in the Protestants that broke away, and you know how we've branched off into Baptist, Lutheran, whatever the other ones. Okay, so you know it was breaking off even then when these Protestants, ex-Catholics, were now moving toward these other Christians that weren't corrupted, okay? So I think this stuff like the Jews are going to have to go through tribulation, I think that is a Catholic thing. I honestly do. I think we, because see, we get our Bible from them. The Protestants do. And the reason we get it from them is because we can't go to the Jews because the Jews don't have the disciples' writings. So anyway, after all that said, I Googled. I said, how did the Catholics get their hands on the Jewish books? Because this is how it all happened. So these Catholics got their hands on the Jewish books. Like I just explained, they wanted just a power grab. And if it was even a real Constantine was really saved or not, and then they just created Catholicism for power. Okay, they are reading the Jewish books. And now the disciples, the 12 disciples, surely those texts probably weren't in the temple, but they might have been. They might have been, because there's a book called the Zorah in the Jewish, and I think that sounds a lot like the New Testament, but they don't call it the New Testament. So somehow the ancient Jews got their hands on the Christian Jew texts like the New Testament. And they literally are preaching that stuff, but they don't word it exactly like we do. And because I've been listening to Rabbi Alana Nava for long enough, I'm pretty sure he's talking about the New Testament, but he doesn't call it the New Testament. Okay. I've heard him quote stuff that sounds just like the New Testament. Anyway, the Catholics, so somehow I think when they burned the temple, they got their hands on all the books and they corrupted them, okay? And we've got that residue where we are supposedly taught that the Jews are going to go through tribulation just because that one verse or a couple verses that don't even definitively, they don't even say they're going to be left in the tribulation, okay? That's just some assertion or pontificating or something that means, and it doesn't mean it at all. And so we have learned our doctrine around that residue of an anti-Semitic Catholicism, a replacement theology doctrine. That's what the Catholicism, ancient Catholicism I'm talking about. I'm not talking about today, okay? That ancient stuff, that's what they were wanting to do. So, and we got some of that, and we don't even realize it. See, we grew up with it, and because let me tell you why I'm saying all this anyway. Besides all this, there's something. It's the Jewish word gula, and I looked it up last night. You can look it up yourself. The gula. It's called the redemption. Has any Christian ever bothered to ask a Jew? I don't think so. You might ask a Jew or a rabbi about all other kinds of things in the Bible, minus the tribulation. Because I'll tell you one thing, there's probably not one Jew, not one rabbi that thinks they're going to go through some tribulation. That's not how they read their book. We got the same book. They call it the Gula. They've been waiting for the Gula ever since we've been waiting for Jesus. For Jesus come back. That's what they wait for too. They wait for the Gula. They're waiting for Jesus too. And nowhere in their interpretation of our Bible that we share are they going to be suffering through tribulation for 7 years. It's called the redemption, where Jesus saves them. Okay? It's what it's all about. Jesus saves. Jesus doesn't torment and tribulate somebody before he saves you. So I think all this bullshit is a residue from the replacement theology that we know is wrong, but we kept something because we were just taught wrong. And we were taught that the Jews are going to have to go through the tribulation. And like I'm telling you right now, you go ask any Jewish rabbi or any Jew, really strict Jew that knows their Bible, they won't know absolutely anything what you're talking about a 7-year, even though they probably have the New Testament that's not called the New Testament. They know that they will not be suffering 7 years or 3 years, 3.5 years of great tribulation. And notice also that the pastors never want to point out, it's talking all about saints. It's not talking about Jews. It's talking about Christians. It's talking about churches. Okay? And yet you guys, we are pointing at the Jew again. It's always the Jew, the Jew's fault, the Jew's suffering, the Jew. No, point at your own stupid self. The Revelation is all about Christians. Even Revelation 12, the dragon went down to make war with the remainder of her saints, her brethren called Christians. Okay? So how does a book of Revelation, all about Christians and churches, Jews don't have churches, they have synagogues. How does a Christian, through all these centuries, make it about a Jew? See, we're no better than all these anti-Semites out here then, if that's how we're doing it. And we're going to say, oh, the book of Revelation is about salvation of the Jewish nation. Yet I see not one Jew word in there, except for those 2 spots. No. Revelation is not about Jews. It's about Christians, and it's about churches. And Jesus even said, judgment begins at the house of God first. Not good judgment, bad judgment. Because he says, how much worse for the world or something like that. You know, it begins at the house of God. That's why the Revelation is for the house of God. Okay. That's why it's full of Christians. It has no Jews in it. But we have been taught, even though there's no word of any Jew in there, yet somehow we've twisted it into being about Jews, and it's not. You go ask a rabbi. There's nothing in their mind. They have no idea about teaching. I'm just upset that in case a Jew might hear a Christian Protestant preacher say that the tribulation is for the salvation of the Jewish, that might be a little offensive. And in case a Christian sitting in the pew meets a Jew, and they might tell that Jew, you're going to go through tribulation unless you get saved. That's crazy. The book is all about a Christian. It's all about Christians. How did we twist it around to make it about Jews? Okay? They already believe and know something entirely different, and it's similar to what we believe about ourselves. Oh, we're going to be saved because they're so cute and good. No. They already know they're all going to get saved. They've read the book. They've read the prophets. They all get saved. Okay? They already know that. They don't know what these Christian Protestants are talking about. If they have ever heard it, which I hope they haven't, because that is humiliating to think that they've heard us Christians say that we believe the tribulation is for them when it's not talking about one Jew in there. Leave it to us to twist things. And we want to be as far away from anti-Semitism as we possibly can, right? Or replacement theology. That's what I'm just saying. I think this is all some kind of residue that we haven't realized. And we haven't seen the fact that there's not one mention of Jews in that book. It's all about Christians and churches. Okay? It's not about Jews. Yet we're making it about Jews. How has that happened? So I asked, how do the Catholics get their hands on the Jewish books? Because that's the book we're reading. The Protestants are reading that garbage that they twisted up. Now, we have, through the years, gotten it from the original Jews. Okay? We have. In the Greek and the Hebrew, Koine Greek and all that. That's good. But these other New Testament books, where are those original writings? Okay? The Catholics got them. And what did they do with them? They whiteouted some stuff and blobbed in their own lies. Who knows what they've done? So this tells you, it says the Catholic Church acquired many historical Jewish manuscripts, texts, and Hebrew codices through centuries of systematic confiscations. See, the Jews have always been targeted. What makes you think they would not be targeted by a Catholic, by Christians? That the Catholics taught us to hate them. Probably. Replacement theology. Why wouldn't a Christian hate a Jew that killed our Jesus? And now we're the new. Okay, that's evil. And we don't want to be exercising, believing, or practicing, or listening to anything evil, now do we? So it's best to know the history. But like I said, I've been thinking about this for a while now. Why do we think the Jews are going to go through tribulation? I think it has something to do with the Catholics stealing the Jewish books. Okay? And nothing against Catholics. Nothing against good Catholics. Because actually, yeah, their little system they got there, it's the same thing everywhere in every church. I mean, that's pretty good. It's pretty good the way you guys, they have spawned a bunch of good people. So have the Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, okay, so now they confiscated forced inquisitorial searches, and censorship campaigns in Europe. And this is way after the destruction of the Second Temple. But I'm telling you, we all know this. They've been persecuted since day one. Why wouldn't their books be stolen? Yeah, I mean, who's looking out for them? Nobody. Everybody's against them. So somebody stole all their books and burned their temple. And it's the Romans, from whence Roman Catholicism came from. So, and censorship campaigns in Europe alongside private acquisitions and scholarly collections. This is probably newer information, but what somebody could find out is what is the oldest history. From the Parable Channel, you can find out when they implemented the first pope, and it wasn't Peter. Okay, so how did they get their grubby little hands on all that? Back in 70 AD, was it, that they burned the temple? So, and they were probably stealing them even back in those days. Back in those days, with scribes, there were inquirers, that trashy newspaper thing, the Inquirer. They had fake scribes back then too. They probably had fake New Testament stuff they were writing and lying, and even before the temple was destroyed. So the devil is always trying to attack Jesus, which is the word. In Revelation, it says that. So Jesus is always going to try to attack the word. The main thing is to make sure, even if you don't know you're believing a lie, just use common sense. That why, like I've been saying all along, why would God do that to the Jews? They're the main branch that brought everything to everybody, yet they're going to get burned, whatever. And we are going to get raptured. Sure, I believe it. I know it. But I know that the Jews aren't going to, and even if the first half is all kind of peaceful and everything, the second half, they're running for the hills, and they're going to be protected. Now, and like I've said, preachers aren't going to preach about the parables, how bad Christians and your house is going to get burned and only your life remains. And then if you bury your talent, you're going to get taken from you, even what you didn't get, which means your life. You didn't give yourself your life, so God's going to take even your life. It even says that. And you're going to burn, weeping and gnashing of teeth. So why do we think that of ourselves, yet we don't think that of the main branch? That's a little weird, and we've never stopped to think that that's weird. So they were confiscated, and inquisitions, and the inquisitions and papal states, so the popes were invented by then, beginning heavily in the 13th century and peaking during the Counter-Reformation church authorities, often prompted by converted Jews accusing Hebrew texts of blasphemy, ordered seizure of Jewish books. Okay, see, again, and I'm not dogging on the disciples or anything, or Titus or whoever, but even the disciples and Paul and everybody had to reprimand some of their own brethren Jewish converts, because they were trying to insert some Jewish traditions into the Christianity, okay, into the new man. So nobody's perfect. So Jesus was preaching this for what, only 3 years? And I have no doubt Jesus is supernatural, but I'm just saying, he was teaching a brand new thing, which had been prophesied in all the old prophets anyway, but and all his disciples knew the Old Testament. So he came with this new, he says, I've come to fulfill the word and the law, not do away with it. And just 3 years of teaching, then he's gone. The disciples were writing feverishly, I'm sure, or scribes and stuff. And it's basically a brand new way of life. Jews have been living as a Jew for centuries, and all of a sudden Jesus, the Messiah, finally comes, and things get turned on their head, and things are changing. The Jews that Jesus healed, they followed him. Okay, so it's such a new way of life for the Jews, okay? Paul, all of them, Peter, Titus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, all of them. And they're writing all this down, and it's so new. Not only is it new, it is literally new. It's literally only 3 years old. And there's a lot of jealousy in the world, and a lot of power-hungry people in the world. And since day one, it has gotten attacked, I'm sure. And so it already had a bullseye on its head. It just needed somebody big enough to come and really take it over. And I think that's what happened with the Catholic Church. And then they smacked a label on it, calling it Catholic. And Roman Catholic was the original name. In fact, there's still Roman Catholics, and then there's plain old Catholics. So some of these Catholics are more strict than the newer Catholic probably from the Lutheran when they got their ass busted wide open. When they, you know, what's that term where you bust them up in a lie? And so they're like, oops, they caught on to us, Luther over here. So they started changing it. Well, that's probably the Catholic Church, but I think the Roman Church, I don't know if it's called Roman Church or Roman Catholic, but it's called something, and it's okay. So anyway, you can Google this yourself and read it yourself, that in 13th century, and yeah, public burnings and seizures, these poor Jews, and even Christians, where we were with the Jews and being Christian Jews, and Jews were Christians, and then there were your regular Jews that weren't Christians. You know, we were getting along with them. We weren't beating them over the head. We were, yeah. Anyway, in 1553, Pope Julius III ordered the public burning of the Talmud in Rome's Campo di Fiori. Okay? Catholic Church has so much to apologize for. Maybe they have. But just remember, the Protestants got their Bible from the Catholics. In fact, we even took some books out. So you go to a Catholic church today, they got like my ex-husband. His book, Bible, has all the others, many more books, but not all of the lost books. Like, what do they call that book? Anyway, the Catholic, and I'm sure the Roman Catholic Church probably has every book in there. And it's the Roman Church that decided which books were going to go into the Bible that we call Bible. So their Vatican is full of texts that nobody's ever seen, I'm sure. And who knows what the church is probably okay now, but who knows? I'm just saying. I'm mad. I'm just mad for what they did. Kind of like black people that are racist against white people, and they want to be mad at a white person that doesn't know anything about what they went through or their ancestors. And then they themselves don't know what their own ancestors went through. And it's like, why are you making me pay? I don't know nothing about that. It's the same with the Catholics. I'm not trying to make them pay for something they weren't even alive and around for. They may not know their history. So I'm not blaming Catholics of today. I'm mad at the old Catholics, but I can't even really be mad because Satan is always out there trying to destroy the Word of God, which is Jesus, because that's really all his people have. Jesus says, I must go so that the Holy Spirit can come. And the Holy Spirit prompts us to write, prompts us to teach, prompts us to witness. Okay, well, I forgot what I was saying. The word is God. He spoke it. He speaks it through people. He speaks it through you, through me. So he is the Word. He's the one that gives us our breath, makes our heart beat, makes our brain tell our heart to beat. He is the Word. And it's going to be attacked from the beginning. So I'm just mad at the old Catholic Church that did all this. Maybe it was the Romans. Maybe the original Catholic Church was no more than a Roman Empire trying to put a Christian name on it because they wanted some of these Jewish Christians to come over, and it was a power grab, okay? So I'm just mad at the old Catholics. I know the newer ones are sorry and everything, okay? They're like, don't judge me, I didn't do it. All right, we're just going along with our little, we all match every Catholic church you go into. They all do the same thing the same way. So they are not to blame. It's the old people, the old Catholic. So it says in 1553, okay, ordered the Talmud, to be burned. During these raids, Inquisition officials frequently confiscated most Hebrew-language books found in Jewish homes, synagogues, and ghettos, not just the Talmud. And then they did repeated sweeps, systematic searches, and confiscations across the papal states occurred repeatedly, such as in 1731, 1738, 1748, and 1753 under Pope Benedict the whatever. Let's see, it's X before, okay, 10-4. Would that be 14th? Or, yeah, okay. Pope Benedict the 14th to root out and censor texts. That's Roman numerals. I don't speak Roman or read Roman, but I've learned some Roman numerals. Okay, censorship and archival preservation. Expurgation. The church established bodies like the Index of Prohibited Books and specific commissions to censor Hebrew texts. Official revisers frequently, this is in parentheses, frequently apostate Jews working for the Inquisition. I told you all along. This pope was invented probably by some bad Jew or bad Christian Jew or bad Christian that wanted power. And they said, hey, yeah, I know all about the Jewish history. I know I'm a Christian. I know all about, the Christians are Jewish heritage. That's our history, is whatever the Jews have done and wrote about, we've learned. That's our school book, okay? So whether it was a corrupt Jewish Christian or a corrupted Roman or Greek Christian or whoever nationality was out there, Arab Christian, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it was some kind of corrupted person that got in bed with Rome, the system of Rome, for a power grab to say, I'll be the intermediator between the Christians and the power over here in Rome, and corrupt it all. But God will always prevail, no matter what Satan tries to corrupt. People still get saved, and people still learn the word. So the church established, parentheses, official revisers, and then in parentheses, frequently apostate Jews working for the Inquisition, edited. So official revisers from the Catholic Church. So it's like the wolf guarding the hen house. No. So some corrupted Jew or Christian Greek, whatever they were Christians. Okay. They were editing, redacting, or tore pages out of seized Jewish books before returning or restoring them. Yeah. And that's where we get our Bible, from the Jews, which got stolen from the Catholics, which got stolen by the Catholics. And then we broke off from the Catholics, okay? So I'm just trying to encourage you to think about this theology of Jews being left behind in the trib. Where does it come from? It probably comes from a corrupted Christian, whatever nationality they are, whether they were a Jew, a Greek, they were a Christian, and it invented the Catholic religion for power, and they redacted, they blobbed up, they censored, they burned. This is what they did to the Jewish books that we learned from. I mean, every Jew walking around, Jew rabbis, that read from the Koine Greek or whatever's left that wasn't corrupted and burned and ripped out and destroyed, they've learned from. Still to this day, they are the ones we should be learning from, because that's where Christianity got everything. Jesus came, he already knew everything those Jews knew, but he added to it by kind of subtracting from it in a way, but it doesn't mean he wanted to do away with it, okay? So somebody corrupted it or tried, and that's where we get it from. We get our book from the Jews that these Catholic people tried to destroy, is what I'm trying to say. So it's not like there's any verses in the Bible that definitively say the Jews are going through tribulation, but somehow we have been intimated and taught that somehow through this Catholic doctrine that we got it from, after they got it from the Jews, after they burned and ripped out pages and messed and mangled around. And then they hand it to us. All right? So just think on your own. Think on your own, not what your theology teacher taught you. Read your book on your own. Read your Bible on your own. Where in the Bible, like I said, give me some cold, hard facts and verses that definitively say Jews will be in the tribulation. There's not one that I know of. Otherwise, I would have been thinking, oh, well, all this time knowing about the Jews, learning about the Jews. Never once have I ever desired or wanted them to go through tribulation, much less be saved. They're already saved. I mean, the blood of Jesus has already saved them, as far as I'm concerned. And even they know it. They already know that. They already know the verses that's talking about eagle's wings and, oh, they're going to be safe. But no Christian ever bothers to ask them what they believe about the Gula, about the end times. Okay? Because we should be learning about that. But because we don't ask them, because we assume we know it. We assume they're going to be in the trib. But let's not talk to them about that, because that's our secret. And why would we bother even asking them? They're going to tell us something that they believe, but we know the real truth. We know that they're going to be in the 7-year tribulation. That's like saying to your dad and your mom, I know more than you, when you're 5 years old. No, you don't tell a Jew what the book says. The Jew tells you what the book says. And the Jew, if you bothered to ask, if you were honest and said, hey, look, we Christians, we believe that you're going through the 7-year tribulation. Is that wrong? They'd be like, yeah, I'll bet you. They're going to say, no, let me tell you what's going to happen. But because we think we know, we don't want to ask them that, because they might learn what we think, and that might hurt their feelings. But we'll blare it from a pulpit because we figure no Jews are watching a Christian channel, right? Or a Christian church. So I'm just asking you, find the verse yourself where it says they're going through tribulation. Because as far as I can tell, Revelation isn't talking about Jews. It's talking about 7 churches. It's talking about believers in Christ, keeping the commandments and the testimony of Jesus Christ. Jews don't do that. And any other verse in the Bible outside of Revelation that talks about you're going to hell if you don't accept Jesus Christ, still, that doesn't have anything to do with the tribulation. And if you're going to be preaching that verse, yet you won't be preaching the other verse that says they're saved with an everlasting salvation, what kind of teacher are you when you won't teach both verses? Because that verse about if you don't accept Jesus, you're going to hell, that is for everybody except the Jews. Because the Jews, if you were to read the other verse with it, in the Old Testament says the Jews are saved with an everlasting salvation, that would tell you right there that everybody who doesn't accept Jesus Christ is going to go to hell, except a Jew, because their eyes and ears are closed, which, like I said in another video, to me, it is way harder for a Gentile than it is for a Jew, because the Jews, they got it on easy street for eternity. Not now. They don't have it on easy street now. Their whole lives have been hell on earth. They've been hunted like animals since time began. Okay, they're not going through tribulation. I mean, I'm not saying that as a Bible quote or a Bible scripture. I'm saying that that is my stance. I don't care if other people don't agree, and I'm not saying it to say you're wrong and I'm right. I'm just telling you as that's my statement. The Jews aren't going to hell if they don't believe in Jesus. I've said that before. So if I just ask you, read the Bible without what they've taught you in theology school or in church, that Jews are going through tribulation. Because I don't see anywhere in the Bible where it says that. And I think it's a Catholic thing. It's an ancient Catholic teaching. So it goes on just a little bit more. Expurgation. The church established bodies like the Index of Prohibited Books, capitalized, and specific commissions. So that was a commissioned business called Prohibited Books. And it was a coalition that specific commissions to censor Hebrew texts. Official revisers, I did read this, frequently apostate Jews working for the Inquisition edited, redacted, or tore pages out of seized Jewish books before returning or storing them. Collection and storage. Many confiscated manuscripts, along with works obtained through private estates, scholarly purchases, or gifts, ultimately flowed into institutional repositories like the Vatican Library, which is what I asked in my question anyway. The Vatican Library, which houses one of the world's most significant collections of ancient Hebrew manuscripts today. That's what I had just said earlier. I'm sure the Vatican is full of books. And yeah, it is, but they tore the pages out. They edited them, they redacted, and tore out pages. And finally, if that's what happened, which it did, I'm saying that's my truth. I hate that term, but I understand that there's diehard Christians that probably won't agree with me, but I'm telling them and whoever that that's true what I say, which is that, so if the Jews have always been helpless, and the hunted, I bet God, for his people and his people only, because they're chosen, because they're attacked and hunted all the time, I'm sure God found one Jew, if not a few, that were able to save the main things untouched, untore up, and redacted and edited. I know the Vatican has probably all originals of everything they stole, but knowing God, he saved some originals. I'm sure not all of them, because the Vatican is obviously full of them and jam-packed full of lots of stuff, texts. But I'm just saying whatever main things that God wanted them to have untouched and unmolested, unadulterated, I'm sure he found some Jews to have that happen. And that's what they do to this day, is that Torah writing with those cylinders. But there's more books than just the Torah. And I'll bet God made sure that these wicked, evil people did not confiscate every copy of everything. Okay? And that's basically the only point of this video, is to just ask you to think about what you believe and why you believe it. Because if you ask yourself why you believe it, next ask yourself who taught you that. And then if you know who, then ask yourself who taught them. And you may be like going down the line, well, they're reputable. Maybe it was his name escapes me, Chuck Missler. Maybe then whoever taught Chuck, and then whoever taught them, and whoever taught them, and whoever taught, I don't care. You can go on down the line. I'm just saying right now, I think it's just something that was taught, therefore it was accepted, because it was taught so long, and whoever the original person that started teaching it, the original Christian, they might have been a Catholic. So, I'm not an old world Catholic, a power-hungry, grabbing Catholic. So, controlling. I don't know. Maybe it was a Lutheran, an original Lutheran, and they hadn't had that residue rubbed off yet, and they still kind of had some bad feelings about the Jews, okay? Until that all got, over time, rubbed off some more. So I just ask you to think, because it honestly makes no sense. They're the branch, they're the root, and they've been suffering all this time. And like I've said many times before, you can open any prophet and read any calamity and catastrophe of judgment from God, and you can insert America in it, or that's the only replacement theology that's going to happen, is the trib. Because now these Gentile Christians and Gentiles are going to be in it. The Jews have paid their dues now. That's my truth. That's what I believe from reading my Bible without any teachers about Jew stuff. When, that's just common sense to me. God's not going to take his people that have been chosen to spread the word of God to the whole world, and then they're going to be the ones getting beat to hell in the trib. No. If there are any Jews in the trib that are saved with an everlasting salvation, that could be, maybe they're the Jews that had a charmed life and they need some smacking around, and God might smack them around for a few days and then let them die. Maybe he won't torture them too long. But look, the Holocaust, what they did to them in the Holocaust, that is demonic. It's demonic. What happened on October 7th, that was demonic. Pure demonic. Both of them. Holocaust, any pogrom, any Jew hunting that goes on today, any anti-Semitism. I'm mainly talking about the horrific demonic torment and torture in the Holocaust and on October 7th. I don't know what they did at the other pogroms. I haven't read about them or if they've documented, but what has been taught and told about what happened and what they did with the Jews, making soap out of them, making lampshades out of their skin, making art out of their body parts, a dead Jew. How sick and demonic is that? Not only that, using them as science experiments, taking pictures of them like it's a family portrait while they're bandaged up, like Frankenstein, after they did a experiment on them. Sick minds, okay? Trib is worse. Trib is, no one's gone through that on earth. Jesus says, the Bible says. And so the Jews are not going through that. They've already been through the Holocaust. They've already been through October 7th. And nothing like that is ever going to happen to them again. No, it has all happened now. The trib is a supernatural evil. Just like now, anti-Semitism and October 7th and on earth, the Holocaust and pogroms, that's an earthly evil. And that's a supernatural hatred, yes. But for now, there's a restrainer. It's called the law that the world adopted from the Jews, from God. God used them as messengers for the whole world. That is the law. That's why people do that shit in secret. Okay? Because they know in their heart that's immoral, because it's taught, because God's law is taught, because God's people, the Jews, brought the world the law of God. That's why there's any kind of boundaries at all. And so that stuff is going to be on steroids. That kind of torment and torture that they did in the Holocaust to the Jews, and they did to some of these women and children and men on October 7th, that is supernaturally evil. That is supernaturally demonic. But the 7-year tribulation is that on crack. Yes. So anything you read about what they did to the Jews in the Holocaust and on October 7th and any other time of a supernatural demonic torment and torture, that's going to happen to Christians in the trib, because they don't want to torture you if you're not a Christian. Okay? If you take the mark of the beast, they're your friend. They don't need to torture you. But it's now the world's turn. The Jews have been through their tribulation their whole life. Any Jews that might be left in the tribulation, like I said, just their nationality alone, even if they did live a charmed life, and God's like, well, I'll smack them around a little bit. Because look at them, they suffered already in October 7th. They've suffered in the Holocaust. I don't think any Jew will really be able to be allowed to suffer in the trib whenever it starts getting bad, like at the second half, I guess. But yeah, I might get on here, and because I know Jack Hibbs said that, Matthew 24 is actually a tribulation chapter, and I did do a few videos on that, and that's what I think too. I think Matthew 24 and the other Gospels that are talking about, I think that is sheerly, purely 100% trib. But because I'm so indoctrinated, a couple of times after I realized that, and after I did my videos, I made some posts, something about, maybe they might deliver us up to be persecuted and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I'm like, no, I don't think so. I don't think, I think that's the trib. So see, I had forgotten that I think that, and also in those videos, I think I did 3 of them, I had forgotten my own, because I was like, I was reading it to you, and I said, Jesus said, and don't be deceived. Deceived about what? Deceived about who I am, about me coming. Don't be deceived about my coming. And then as I'm going on in the video, I forgot what I realized. He's like, don't be deceived about my coming, because my coming is going to be obvious. I'm going to crack the sky open with lightning. So he's trying to tell him, let no man deceive you. Now, other verses in the Bible might say something about don't be deceived about this, that, and the other. But I think Matthew 24 and the other Gospels are specifically, I think he's specifically talking about don't let people deceive you about me coming, like I'm over here in a closet, I'm over there, because it will be unmistakable. The whole world will see it. I think that's what he meant about deception in that one sentence. And but yet I'd forgotten about it as my video went on because I'm so indoctrinated with whatever we're taught. We're taught that, oh, it's deception of all kinds of deception of everything. And that's true in other verses. But Jesus in Matthew 24 is specifically talking about deceived about his, because they asked him two questions. When are you coming? Or what is the sign of the time? And the end. What is the sign of your coming? And the end. So he's answering those two questions. What is the sign of your coming? He's like, don't let anyone deceive you. The sign of my coming is everyone's going to know. It's unmistakable. Everyone's going to see it. Don't let anyone deceive you about my coming. I'm not in a closet. I'm not in the desert. I'm not over there and over here. I'm not the guy saying I'm the Christ. I'm not the one prophesying the Christ is over here. I'm not the false prophet, false Christ over closet in the desert. No, the whole world is going to see me. Don't be deceived. The whole world is going to see me. Don't be deceived. That's what he's talking about in that particular deception. But I myself even had forgotten about that new revelation. I was like, hey, you guys, I think Matthew 24 is talking about the trib. And I think he's talking about, if he's talking about the trib, he's obviously talking also about the second coming, when he's coming in the clouds. But he's also not saying to the disciples, hey, in the second coming, I'm stepping on the Mount of Olives and I'm splitting it in half. And I'm coming with all of y'all on horseback, white horses. But hey, he doesn't mention everything in every prophecy because he knows that John is going to write Revelation later and explain those things probably. So, but I still don't think it's cracking the Mount of Olives. When is he going to do that then? After we all conquer with him on the white horse, and then he's going to get off his horse and go step on the Mount of Olives? Or do you think he's going to step on the Mount of Olives first? No one wants to teach that. So we're just left with the dangling question in the back of our mind, and we never bother to care to ask. So when does he step on the Mount of Olives and split it in two then? Before he comes back with all of us on the horse, or after? Or are you going to try to tell me it's in the millennium, or in the New Jerusalem, or the this or that? I just don't understand some of this stuff. Mainly because it's taught thoroughly enough by some, and the Daniel, the 70 weeks, and the Daniel this and that. And I've heard all that. It's still, I can't get it. I can't really understand it. But, now if you start telling me, and I'm not telling anybody, I meant to say this, I'm not implying that somebody should add to that book of Revelation. Like when I say, well, what, you don't ever talk about the people. That's not adding to the book. What I mean by, no one's explaining about the people. What I mean by that is, no one is dissecting it enough to where it says, okay, between this time frame and this time frame, these people, they're Christians, they're getting tortured, they're getting beheaded. These are non-Christians, and they haven't taken the mark of the beast yet because it is whatever. You know what I mean? They don't explain that kind of thing, which is what I've always wondered, but I don't bother to talk about it because I never had a channel. But I also never bothered trying to look into that stuff because even though somebody goes in depth in it, it's still too vague. It's still too vague because even me myself going over it, it's hard for me to timeline it, but that's because I don't have enough brain cells. If AI did it, then there would be these little markers. There would be markers of this happens, then that happens, then that. And I'm not talking about just the trumpets and the seals and I'm talking about the people in between, okay? And anyway, I don't know how to explain it. Maybe you understand what I'm trying to say. I just don't understand how a non-believer can be walking around scot-free without the mark of the beast. They're unsaved. They're not being tortured. Okay, maybe it's the first half. But still, if you think about that, the first half, there's still going to be, I think the whore is there in the first half. She is drunk with the blood of the saints. So there's some murderings going on. There's some Christians. Why are those Christians there in the first place? Why did they get left behind? And yeah, I like the way Jack Hibbs was explaining something about there's a church age, which is the rapture people. There's a something else age, and he doesn't use the word age, but there's like 3 categories. And like, I don't understand what they mean, but he was explaining that because it tied in and it helps you understand something else. But I forgot what it is. But it makes sense when I heard it, and whatever it was about. So anyway, I've been afraid to look at the red time bar, but thank you God, it's not an hour and 45 minutes. So I guess that's enough, and that's all. I just wanted to encourage anybody to, even if nobody ever preached about Revelation ever again until Jesus came back, because there's too many other things to preach about. Wouldn't it be, why did I say that? Darn it, now I forgot what I was going to say. And not that every time somebody goes in depth in the book of Revelation, do they say that fact that the Jews will be left behind in the tribulation. Not everybody says that. Every now and then they will. But yeah, if nobody ever taught it again, or they never said that again, well, wouldn't you want to at least wonder why it was ever said? Why was it taught? Why do they think that? Where are the verses that say that that's happening? Because clearly all the Jews, you read it in the Old and the New Testament. In Romans, they're saved. In the Old Testament, they're saved. And even the verse I quoted to you in a few videos back, where Jesus was, I've tried to ask Jesus, I'm like, Jesus, what's that verse again? I was quoting Jesus, and Jesus quotes, whatever you quoted Jesus, you're quoting it to the Jew also, whether they believe in him or not, because their eyes and ears are closed, okay? And they're saved with an everlasting salvation. And it does say Israel, but Israel, without a people group, isn't Israel. So, of course, when he says all of Israel is saved with an everlasting salvation, he really literally means the Jews, okay? That's like saying all of America is saved with an everlasting salvation. Well, there really isn't any country that can exist without a people in it. So if it said all of America is saved with an everlasting salvation, well, of course it means the people. So yeah, the verse says Israel is saved with an everlasting. And if you want to bother and ask a rabbi, a Jewish rabbi, ask an old Jewish rabbi, not a Messianic rabbi either. If you ask an old Jewish rabbi and some of his Jewish people that he's teaching, most Jews already know they're waiting for the redemption, for the salvation. They're waiting for the Messiah, because they're going to be saved. Just like we're waiting for the Messiah to rapture us. They're waiting for the Messiah to save them from the anti-Semitism. Think about what we're teaching here when we say they're going to go through 7 years of tribulation and the Antichrist. They think the Messiah is the Antichrist. Okay, well, fine. But think about it this way. I forgot. Sorry. they're being taught the pure word in Hebrew, Koine Greek, whatever, okay? Not one of these Jews is being taught that there's some kind of tribulation that they're going to go through. So if you were to ask them, what do they expect when the Messiah comes? Because we Christians think it's the Antichrist. Well, we know it's the Antichrist, but you guys don't know it. You would never do that, would you? Well, why don't you try it? But not in a rude way, of course. You could say, well, listen, I've been taught as a Christian, and for millennia or centuries, we've been taught that you Jews, well, they're going to first of all say, well, that's a Jesus book. Revelation is that heretic Jesus. His people wrote that, so we don't believe that. Well, fine then, don't bring it up. You can bring up and ask them. You can say, we Christians, we believe in a tribulation of 7 years. What are you guys taught? I can look it up right now. They're going to tell you, we're taught about the Gula. Let me show it to you right now, because I'll show you how to spell it. Was it on this phone? I looked it up. Hold on. Because it was hard to find the word, because the stupid Google doesn't know. Okay, Gula. And it sounds weird. Hold on. Oh, damn. Gush. No, not gush. Gula. See, I won't. It's probably on this other phone. In Hebrew, it's called the Gula, the redemption, salvation. How do you say it in English, Gula?
In English, the Hebrew word Gula, which means the redemption, can be translated as redemption or deliverance.
Yeah, they're looking for a deliverance. They're looking for salvation just like we are. Jesus is going to come back in the rapture and save us. Okay? If you believe in the rapture and you believe in a pre-trib rapture, we're believing that he's saving us. That's what they believe too, in their Jewish way. They're taught that they're going to get saved, just like they wished Jesus was the Messiah back then, but they rejected him. They didn't want him, but they thought he was going to save them. Even the disciples who did believe in him thought he's going to save them, okay, on earth, not save them and take them to heaven, right? So since Jesus wasn't their Messiah back then, but Jesus knew already that they were going to reject him. Okay, well, so sure, it may be the Antichrist, but still, if you were to ask them, they have a belief, and it's not a tribulation that they're going to have to go through. That's why Jesus says, that's why we've been teaching it for centuries. Matthew 24, they're going to run for the hills, okay? Because that's probably mid-trib, and they're going to get saved. Now, it says in Judea, run from the hills. Well, also in Isaiah, he's saying, also in Revelation, I'm going to fly on eagle's wings, the woman, to the wilderness. Also I shared you the verse of Isaiah, where they will mount up on wings like eagles. We always claim that for ourselves. That is literally going to happen. They're going to mount up on wings like eagles, and they will go to Jerusalem, to the wilderness, on wings like eagles. The woman, they're going to run for the hills. That's how they're going to run. Just like, the prophet Ezekiel ran. I was bringing that up in one video. He ran as fast. He outran horses. They had a supernatural strength. This supernatural evil, they're not going through that. And it's going to be way worse in the trib. They're not going through any more Holocausts, any more October 7. They're not going through trib. The first part of the trib, if it's easy, fine. They'll go through it. But once it starts getting hard, they're not going to go through that. So Jews are not going through tribulation. Great tribulation. Okay, so that's what I was coming on here to talk about. And thanks for listening. And I read a little bit more Revelation today. And I mean, I agree more and more now how it's the second half, but I still want to go over it again in that mindset of it. It still doesn't make sense though, and it never did, because that's why I was excited when I thought I figured it out, that it was in the first half. Because if you do it in the second half, those two witnesses have to be here a solid 3.5 years. And then there's that verse, if I didn't cut it short, no man would survive. I mean, if the two witnesses, something's got to be overlapping, but the word says a solid 3.5 years in the front, I'm pretty sure, and a solid 3.5 years in the second half. So unless those days be shortened, I don't know if he would shorten them in the back or shorten them in the front or in the middle or whatever. But yeah, those little, I don't know what, it's not discrepancies. Those little details, that's what it is. Those little details I want to know. And if I could line it all up and have the timing, even in the second, even if it's all in the second, right? And I had timings of timing things out, like how I was saying, it would be pretty much impossible for someone to have taken the mark of the beast because it wasn't offered yet, number one. Number two, how are non-Christians walking around without being tortured, killed, beheaded? The mark of the beast may not be offered yet. And when do the Christians start getting tortured? Are they tortured from the get-go? If they are, then that means maybe there's some atheists who aren't getting tortured. But still, the mark of the beast probably isn't offered yet, because those angels wouldn't be asking people to worship God, giving them and they wouldn't be saying, don't take the mark. And there was something else. When Jesus says, come out of her, my people. If that is the very, very end, then where do you fit in run for the hills? That would be two escapes for the Jews. They would have been running for the hills in the middle when Antichrist says he's God. But yet if the whore is at the end of the trib, along with the two witnesses getting killed and raised again, that's a lot of squeezy time. You got to quickly work. If that whore dies at the very end, then when Jesus says, come out of her, my people, is that a second salvation for the Jews? If there's some Jews there, I haven't thought that through yet, because that's after the mark of the beast is offered. So how did my people, unless he's talking to the 144,000 and all their converts, all their Christian converts, and where have they been? Have they been walking around scot-free without having to take the mark? Without having to be tortured and beheaded for the name of Christ? See, it's those details that have never been pointed out is why I can't believe the way it's taught. I can't really believe that way, because I can believe it if it's true, yes, but I can't grasp it. I feel like there's something that's not right about that, the teaching of it. There's something that's not right, because when you're overlapping these things as they're happening in here, you can't explain some of this stuff that they're teaching it, the way they're teaching it. There's something that, like what I'm saying, can't be explained. Why aren't they explaining it then? It should be explained. All right? Okay, well, God bless you guys. And I'm praying for you. And yeah, I just totally think that the Democrats today and this DSI, the mentality today is so much like what I feel like that whore She's drunk on the blood of the saints. That's totally the mentality of these Democrats these days. They would gladly kill us. Or if one of their weirdo trans people, mentally ill, went out and assassinated somebody, they would be just fine with that. Assassinated a Christian, assassinated a president, our president, they would be fine with that. They would, if there was no legal system, they would probably not even go look for the person that did it. And that, to me, is what's going to be going on in the trib. Now, if it's the first half, I don't see really how. I mean, even if it's the first half, why are there Christians? Unless you're a bad, shitty Christian, a bad servant, that's how. If you are a prodigal, or you're a... Now, I understand that some people believe you can lose your salvation. However, I'm not in that camp, but I do believe you're out of God's protection. When you become a prodigal, you are now... You're saved eternally, but the devil has dibs on you. He can. He's allowed. You're in his playground. You're now out of the hedge of God, his protection. You have decided you're not going to obey your daddy and mommy. You want somebody else to raise you now. Say, mommy and daddy, I disown you. I want Mike and Millie over here to raise me. That's basically what a prodigal does. They're like, I don't want daddy to raise me anymore, Jesus, God. I want to go out into the world. Well, there's plenty of verses about that. You basically are, you're going to go through the tribulation. And even if you die in that state before the rapture or before the tribulation, you're going to get in trouble. You're probably... See, this is where the Catholics get purgatory. They get it from the Jews because they stole their books. That's why they pray to saints, because the Jewish Talmud. Okay. Anyway, and there's other things the Catholics did not adopt from the Jews. But I just forgot what I was talking about. But it was probably about Revelation and being a prodigal. And Jesus even says in the Bible that your house is going to get burned up. Mm-hmm. He even says, if you are a vessel of dishonor in the house of God, you better clean it up, and then you can be a vessel of honor. But if you don't, then you're going to stay a vessel of dishonor, and things happen with vessels of dishonor. Also, there's Ezekiel 18. I've talked about that before. Jesus didn't come to do away with the law. Ezekiel 18 is still a law. And so whatever I was explaining, I was about to explain something, but yes, the tribulation is going to have some Christians in it. I just don't understand why they're called saints in Revelation, like they're almost like they're scholarly Christians, almost like they're scholars. But maybe it's just the term God gives them because they've suffered. Whether they just became a Christian and then got beheaded, they're still a saint. You know what I mean? It just sounds like they're out preaching. It sounds like they're out being very, I don't know. So I haven't really thought about that much, how in the first part, how is that going to coexist when they're out testifying about Jesus? They're not being beheaded. They're not being forced to take the mark. It's still a free country, free religion. So I'm sure they're going to get hated. Is the whore in existence yet? I mean, I think so. I think she is. Whether she's in there in the first half or second half, she is drunk on the blood of the saints, which means that those saints aren't free for very long before they get killed by her. But they're preaching until she finds them and kills them, or gets her goons to come kill us. Y'all, whatever. I don't plan on being here. So, and like I said, after Matthew 24, all the parables he gives talk about a pre-tribulation. Because he's talking to saved disciple Jews. They will not, he's telling them about it, about the trib, but he's also in the parables, he's explaining that they will not be in it because they are Christian Jews, Christ-believing Jews. But that doesn't mean Jews are going to be in the trib. I mean, maybe, I don't think so. I think Jesus is talking, yes, to the whole world except Jews. Because you can't just take that one verse or those verses, and then what are you going to do with the other verse that says the Jews are saved with an everlasting salvation? Unless you want to say, translate that to mean that even if they take the mark of the beast and die in the tribulation, even before they take the mark or before they accept Christ, that means that they're still going to heaven. Either way, trib, no trib, mark of the beast, not mark of the beast, if there is a Jew that takes the mark, they're still saved with an everlasting salvation. So I don't believe they're going through the trib, though. I don't believe that. The bad part. Okay, well, bye, you guys. For real this time. Bye. And I'll pray for you.